If you find you're unsettled listening today, reach out to a trusted friend or go to tradespodcast.com and click on resources.
We are men in the trades, forging health in the drug poisoning crisis. This is
Off the Clock Toolbox Talk.
We're talking rig life and other tough work sites today with Trevor and Kale. Jumping right in.
After I was 18, I graduated from Ashburn High School here in Saskatchewan, and I took on a role on a service rig. And with that being introduced into my life, I understood that the oil and gas over here was what kind of kept everybody going and really what fed most of the families. And it was a friend in high school, and he said, you know what, hey, I've got a job. He just started on a service rig, and he was telling me how he liked it. And I noticed how he had a cool truck, and I took on my opportunity on a service rig. I set in and kind of earned a spot on a rig. And shortly after that, I got introduced to the dark side of things on the service rig. It didn't take very long to understand that you're there and you earn your spot. It's not just handed to you. Just because you got employed doesn't mean you're staying there. There was a whole different variety of people that were there, but for the most part, it was some pretty rugged dudes. Like, you got to be pretty tough, and you got to be able to withstand that work environment. And after working probably a month on the service rig, I found out pretty quick that it's either fit in or fuck off, and that was it.
Yeah. And I don't know, Kale, if you can relate, but when I went into construction, the first day on the site, I was like, this is my tribe. It was the first time I had a community of people that I really felt that I belonged in, and a space that I felt I belong in, for much of the same reasons, Kale, as you bring up about, my hard work ethic, showing up every day. The hazing was there, but I was like part of it. Like, it wasn't like against me. It was like amongst me. Everybody was participating. We could take a punch. We could pass a punch, give a punch. It wasn't like in elementary school or junior high where I was just the target and I couldn't push back.
Exactly. No, that's a huge one, is being able to say, the hazing side of it is, we're pretty rough on each other. And we use that as a way to almost bring ourselves up.
Our love language.
It's when you hear the term rig pig, people say that and they're like, well, that's supposed to be like a threat or like kind of insulting to you. And like, some of us, we're like, man, we wear that with pride. So you wear that as a badge.
I look at I treat it like this, the word addict now, right? Like, when another addict calls me an addict, I'm like, bingo, you got me. But when I normally says that, I'm like, we should talk about your motives. We should come on over here, So it's
exactly.
I think to be known as a rig pig amongst rig pigs is like different. But when somebody from the accounting firm calls you a rig pig, you're like, yo, we should step outside and sort this out, maybe.
Yeah, that's just right.
I don't know. I wonder what your intent is there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and so when it's within your group, you're kind of your brothers there on the rig. It's you can call each other some pretty harsh stuff. Like, you're riding each other's asses all day. It's like
all day
push, and it's like you get there, you wake up it could be, depending on any location on your rig, if you're getting picked up in town and you're going out to your rig in the morning, it could be 3:30 in the morning or could be 4:30 in the morning. You get to your rig, you start working, you work your full shift, you get home at 9, 8 o'clock, sometimes 10, and then you're up the next morning to do it. So you got to understand, when you start spending that much time with a group of guys, and that much time is spent with the same 4 guys or same 5 guys, you're spending more time with them than your actual family. That group almost becomes your family. It trades positions with the immediate people in your life, almost switch spots with them. It's like you have a full-time job and a part-time relationship. And you just got to understand that that's the way it's going to be. And they get what's left over of you, but you can provide more, money than you've ever had an opportunity before. And
that was part of my guilt early on in my life. Like, looking back, was like, I had a young family. I had my oldest daughter was in diapers. I was, I'm at work 52.5. Well, that was my paycheck on a normal week without excess. That was 52.5 hours in a week. And then I'd go home and I'd be dog tired. And, I wasn't able to show, it just seemed so backwards to me that I'm spending all the best hours of my life with the most energy of my life on a job site and come home and my family gets the table scraps.
Hmm.
But they got lots of food in the fridge and some shiny toys, and my girlfriend
Absolutely.
had a new car, right? Like, but is that what it's all about?
No, and that's just it is, all that material stuff doesn't make up for the time that you lost. It's like when you're working away, I've seen drillers, endless amount of drillers and other workers that are celebrating their kids' first, second, third birthdays over a video chat call.
Yeah,
To see that as understanding is, growing up, I didn't have the best upbringing. I didn't have my father there for me. And I promised myself at a young age, is like, I wasn't ever going to let my family go through that.
yeah,
My future family wasn't ever going to have that same way of being right, like raised as I was. When I found the opportunity to work on a rig, I was like, you know what? I'm sinking myself full heartedly into this. You get a schedule. Sometimes if you're working lots, it's your schedule goes out the window. They say, fuck it, you're working for a
totally.
month, 2 weeks, it doesn't exist anymore. Your month, 2 months, it doesn't matter. And it happens. You'll go for a month and a half straight and bust your ass into the ground where you just come home and you get 5 days off. Well, you're 2 days of sleep, trying to figure out who you are as a person, trying to get your life back because you're so tired and worn out. You used to being around a bunch of dudes on a rig, getting up at a certain time, being
Totally.
rough and rugged all day. And then those 3 days that are left over with your family, well, you're trying to put in a month and a half of time that you lost in 3 days. And you
Yeah.
usually just end up either pissing somebody off, overdoing it, or just there's so much tension and just insecure or unfamiliar feelings that it
You know,
just becomes a mess.
I'm glad you said that because I was just thinking about a friend of mine that worked in the oil patch, and he confided in me that part of it was when he gets home he doesn't feel like he belongs there. He doesn't even feel comfortable in his
Mhm.
own home because his just head's been a totally different space. He said sometimes it's like he comes home and his wife is a stranger to him, like because
Yeah.
he's been living in this space. There's just like this fucking like tribal system of
Yeah.
like pre-civilization around these roughnecks. The sense of humor is different. They're not, you know. He's like, man, I go from using utensils when I eat for 3 days to like eating with my hands, half asleep, and that's life. Like I just dragging myself out of a trailer to go earn my keep.
That's it. You get used to sleeping in a hotel, like a hotel more than your own bed. You come home and your fiance or your girlfriend or wife, whatever it may be, is a stranger to you. I know with my last hitch, I had to work, my 3.5 weeks, and I would work all day. And being on a drilling rig now, like I get a 12-hour shift every day, which is a blessing compared to what I used to working on the service rig side of things. It seems like a perfect job now. But the opportunity to see my family and be able to spend that time in my relationship was like I get up in the morning, I go to work, I get home at the end of the day, try and squeeze all my meals in, shower, get ready for the next day. My girlfriend would get like half an hour to 20 minutes on the phone with me, and that was it. And she'd get that for 2 weeks, 3 weeks at a time. It was just a half hour every single day to say hi, good night, see you tomorrow, stay safe. That was
Yeah.
it. So then I get home, I'm exhausted and I'm drained. I'm just dead to the world. And the first thing she wants to do is, oh, let's go do stuff. And it usually ends up in an argument because you're
Yeah.
drained, you're mentally not prepared for that overflow of excitement and energy. And it becomes hard. And you start getting that battle of, is this the right thing for me? Should I be out here? And then but the paycheck's good. And it starts
Yeah.
slowly creeping on you as a guy in the patch. You get hearing, oh, you shouldn't be out there. You're missing out on birthdays. You're missing out on this. You're not here anymore. You're abandoning your family.
Yeah.
It's like,
Well,
okay.
and the mentality I was around was, like it's all I had to do to entertain people around me was call them names and make fun of them almost, right?
Yeah.
And then I go home and my girlfriend wants to go out for dinner and do stuff like that. And that just seemed the more time I spent around my crews and my work life, the more I started to think she was being unreasonable, right? Like
Mhm.
it was like, and I go home with this attitude, like, hey, I need my space. I'm making all the money. Like I'm putting food on the table. I need space to do that. But yeah, it was a really weird situation. Like looking back, it's incredible how we get programmed to a certain mentality because that's what we're surrounded by too. Right?
And
It's
as
not
a
like we
Exactly.
just pop up.
As an ex-partner of somebody, I think, who is experiencing exactly the things that you guys are talking about, because I'd always be like, you like when we got together, we were gonna go for walks every night, and he's like, I've been outside all fucking day, I don't want to go outside again. And I'm like, I didn't have any of that understanding, and this is why, you know, I think I was hoping this podcast would play this role, is just to educate everybody about
Yeah.
what's really going on, because as a wife, I
Yep.
had no idea. I didn't know the complete and total psychological, social, and physical drain that it is, to the point that you can't function unless you're in your default mode for whatever that is, whether that's using substances or gaming or porn or whatever it is.
Mhm.
I had another gear when I was in early relationship. Honestly, in my addiction, I always had energy to go use, right? Like I
Mhm.
could find a way. And if the guys were going out tonight, I could find a reason to go be with them. And I think my in early relationship, I got the same adrenaline spike, or the same, you know, the same feelings, good feelings of dating somebody early on. And I could find that extra gear to go for those walks. I used to joke years ago that I like every relationship I started, I was only going to do for 2 years. And at 2 years, whether it's going good or not, I'm out, because
Mhm.
I knew that that was like the limit that I could maintain what I thought was a healthy relationship. But it was just everything I did in life was like forced. Like I'd go, the only natural place for me was a job site.
And that was just it, is that sense of belonging you get after, like you said, you show yourself, you kind of prove to the guys that you deserve to be there, and they're like, fucking right on, man, you're sticking around. It doesn't matter what the outcome of this is, like, you're here to bust your ass, we'll keep you around. And after a while of putting in, you said you do 110 hours every 2 weeks. The longest we've ever had to do was we had 192 hours on a 2-week paycheck. And
Wow.
that is like, that's some hardcore work. And I wish nobody ever has to do that ever again.
No, that'll
And
break
so you
the
become,
average person. Be real. There is a very small percentage of people walking this planet that can put in that kind of time, or anywhere close to consistency. I know that was like a peak for you, but I got to imagine like 180 was probably fairly normal.
oh yeah, it's usually like a 120 to 140 hours every 2 weeks is a pretty common check. When it was kind of slow, when oil was up, you might as well just live on the rig, because you're not really going anywhere else. That's it, you're staying there. But with that, you start understanding. You hear 192 hours in 2 weeks. Like, how do you manage that? Oh yeah. Yeah. Yeah, makes sense. With that much separation in families, and the family bond being really broken down in the industry, it's like you got drillers and other workers that are on their third divorces. Like, that's got to be hard on somebody. Like, that's right there. You don't even worry about the job anymore. 3 divorces is enough to put a guy in the ground. And to be able to go through that and maintain that effort of, now you say, oh, okay, well, this is just me wanting to do this, to now you have to do this to survive, because you put yourself in the spot of, you need X amount of money, you get stuck on it, you get addicted to that lifestyle of having the oil and gas industry there to provide for you. So when work slows down, oil crashes, or layoffs come, it feels like the end of the world is kind of creeping in on you. You don't know what to do. It becomes a lot, and people turn to substance use. People turn to a lot of alcohol and drugs, and you try and get your fulfillment somewhere else. And it really destroys the family bond. And before you know it, you're just dealing with a bunch of broken, fucked up dudes that don't know what the hell to do other than work on a rig, because they either have so much shit they have to pay for that they need to stay there, or B, they freaking leave and lose everything.
And then you guys are just flat out, or what, till Christmas, or?
To the 16th, they want to shut down on the 16th and come back on the 2nd.
Oh, okay, nice.
Better than last year where I fucking came in December 24th and didn't fucking do the rig out. I was the only one who came here too.
That would have sucked.
Everybody else left and I was the only one who showed up.
sounds like if you are entering the trade with a lot of vulnerabilities to start with, and in Kale, in your case, I would say your age itself was a vulnerability. It sounds like, Kale, now you are functioning in oil and gas, whereas before you weren't. Like, what needs to happen here to make this better?
Honestly, I think it's more the workers. The guys need to understand that it's not the 70s, it's not the 60s anymore. That old school mentality's got to go. And I say that with respect for the people that work then too, because you know what? It's rugged, it's rough shit, it still is, but that mentality has got to change. We have to see men not wanting to just shy away from everything the moment something's going wrong. There's real issues in life that pop up, and to get the help that they need is they need to be able to feel comfortable saying, hey, I'm not okay. I'm dealing with some shit. Stuff isn't going well, whether it's bills. Unfortunately, the divorce rate nowadays is absolutely ridiculous. So whether you're going through divorce, stuff with family, it could be your health. It doesn't matter. When you're working in the oil and gas industry, your health usually goes to shit pretty quick. And in trades in general, you're beating the living shit out of your body, and you're going to break yourself down quicker than you expect.
What I'm seeing, Kale, in my side of the sector, in the general, like the commercial construction sector and residential building and that area, and I don't know if it's relatable to what you're going through, is I'm seeing a real disconnect on the job site right now between the generation that's coming into the industry and the generation that's on their last legs and ready to leave the industry. And it's a little bit heartbreaking because I see an industry that needs to change the culture. I see young people coming into the industry that have a different sensibility. They're not going to break their back like I did.
Yeah,
That's not like I was proud of it, right? When I had my surgery, I'm like, I was like, oh yeah, I broke my back in the job site, right? And the young guys and women coming into this industry now, they're just not going to do that. They're
exactly.
way more informed about their mental health. They're way more in tune. Like they're not looking to give their whole life to work.
Mhm.
But what I see happening is you got this old guard now who, let's face it, the most beautiful thing about the construction industry and skilled trades is the low barrier of entry.
Mhm.
Anybody, 18-year-old can walk onto a job site and in 6 months owns a massive Dodge Ram pickup, right?
Mhm.
It can give you a life you never thought was possible. You're not going to get that at McDonald's. No hard time intended to McDonald's, but do
Yep.
you know what I mean? So, but the Achilles heel of the industry has always been the low barrier of entry. We
Mhm.
go there because we're not going to fit into an office building. And so what I see now is the old guard is pointing back at the young people, saying these kids don't know how to work. And I'm like, it's not that they don't want to work, right?
Yep.
And the sense of humor and the culture is starting to change. So I see a bunch of old guys that don't fit in anymore. They're not going to go to that other job. They're not going to
Nope.
now be like, oh, I'll go and be a doctor now. I'm going to be an accountant. They're like, this is all I got. I'm 45, 55, 65 years old,
Mhm.
and I don't feel welcome. I don't feel safe in the industry that made me feel safe for so long. So I'm seeing a real, it's not to say that the culture doesn't need to change, but I can be empathetic, compassionate on both sides. And
Mhm.
I think that's why we're seeing,
Mhm.
overdose deaths go up. I think it's just, you know, the place where there was community is now starting to not feel so safe anymore.
Yep. And that's just it, is saying that is the young group of people that are starting to enter the trades is crazy now. Like under 20 years old, you have people flying into the trades, especially in the oil and gas industry in Saskatchewan. You only have to be 17 years old to step foot on a drilling rig, sit on a service rig or a drilling rig. Lowest position on a drilling rig in 2 weeks, you're making over $5,500 after taxes every 2 weeks. 17
Big
years
time.
old, you're making more money in 1 year than usually both your parents are on nowadays, the way house families are. A 17-year-old kid is capable of making more than two parents are in a full year. And that is detrimental because you don't learn anything about finances stepping in there. They just say, here's a paycheck, keep busting your ass, you'll keep getting it. If you don't, you won't get it anymore.
Kale touched on it. I didn't have a problem with my drug use for many years because I could afford it. Like the
Mhm.
consequences just weren't there, and I think, yeah, like we always knew those guys too that were like useless for the first 4 days after payday.
Yep.
And then their paycheck would run out and they'd miss a day and then they'd be super great until the next payday, right? So,
Mhm.
I think you can pay for a lot of misery and
Oh, absolutely.
and just not even be aware of the hole you're digging.
Yeah. And to understand too, it's like the job itself, like the industry, in a hiring manner and stuff, they need to take in and understanding the people that are coming into the industry as well. They have to start really working and offering more availability to say like, hey, if you are having a serious issue, come and say, and not just like, oh yeah, sign the paper, start your first day tomorrow. Here's some stuff they'll ask you on the rig, grab steel toe boots and a hard hat, and you're good to go.
Right.
It's like there needs to be an opportunity to touch base and say, like, yeah, you know what, if you have a drug addiction problem, you've been here for a little bit, there, like I'm pretty sure there's a program whereas if you are talking to your employer about that, hey, you have a serious issue, you need help, that they can help subsidize for getting treatment or some sort of help within a manner with your addiction. And there needs to be the availability for people to understand that just because you say, oh, I have a problem or I need help, it doesn't mean you're just going to get tossed to the wolves and stand true to it. There's, for example, me, I wasn't making it to work. I was completely and utterly useless at the end of my addiction and work. I could have cared less to show up. I didn't want to be there anymore. I much rather use drugs by myself than go and work. And now it's like I'm sober and I probably am the hardest working I've ever been. Even when I was using substances to keep me going every day, I can probably still guarantee right now that I could bust my ass harder being sober and have a better mindset to know when something's going to go wrong and shit's going to hit the fan. Somebody's going to end up dying. I could probably make a pretty decent call and say, hey, I should stop doing this instead of being hailed out and be like, hey, let's keep pushing the limits and see if this is going to go bad. So, understanding that there needs to be an availability for the workers to be clear that it's okay to get and ask for help and not be judged or frowned upon for it and not, be singled out. And mainly it is the employees themselves that need to work together because as Trevor said, I worked with a dude in the service rigs here. He was 68 years old, 68. And that was a lot of bad choices that added up into him being 68 years old, stuck on a rig because he was still paying for it. Yeah. And, I told him, I was like, man, you inspire the living shit out of me. And he's like, oh, well, why is that? I said, because I never want to be 68 fucking years old working on a service rig. And he's like, well, thanks. He's like, but you're kind of an asshole. And I was like, no, I just need you to know the truth here. I was like, you are inspiring me every single day. I was like, and he's seen it. He's being 68 years old. Like his first job was probably shooting woodpeckers off of the friggin' wooden derrick that there used to be. Like, you got to understand that's some old times. And he's seen the change and he's noticed it himself. He's like, yeah, things aren't the way they used to be. When you wake up in the morning, you used to pick up the longest haired dude standing outside of the convenience store because you knew he had a bag of weed in his pocket and he was ready to go, right? And it's just now it's like like Trevor said, there's a mindset. You need to kind of watch out for yourself. We're not gonna go ahead and break our backs in half. Yeah, you know what? We're gonna probably try and prove a point at the first little bit that we can do it if we want to, but we're not gonna keep pushing ourselves because we don't have to show anybody anything.
I think my fantasy though, Kale, and just to add to that is that employers start having these conversations in a serious way. I don't know if you can relate, but for me, coming up in the industry, the safety talk, like you do sometimes, like you do a half-hour safety orientation. Sometimes I've been to full day ones, but the conversation around substance use and alcoholism is if you're drunk or high, you're out of here. That's it.
Yeah.
Right. And it really stops things. So I think, what I'd like to see is we're getting to the point where we're training individuals to like supervisors and how to deal with these things effectively. We're having a stronger conversation with people on job site to say, look, like We need you guys to be healthy. That's our first priority. Just like we talk about safety, we need to be having those interactions, I think twice a year or maybe even quarterly in a serious way to talk about the support, what we expect, like what we plan to do for you if we think you have a problem. We need to have staff members that are like, depending on the size of the company, I think we need staff members that are trained to do these interventions and to stop guys and say, hey, like, Kale, man, you're missing a lot of work and you look rough. What's going on for you? Like, we want to support you. Is there somebody we can get you to talk to? Is there something? Right? Like, I think there's a way we already talked about it. We spend all the best years of our lives and all the best hours of our day at work on a job site.
Of course.
You know, that is our family, and our family needs to take care of us.
Yeah.
Our parents, our employers. Like, it's got to shift. People are dying out there, and it's heartbreaking. Some really good men, are losing their lives to this. And I think it takes all hands on deck.
I think that it's a big shift too, because for many decades, substance use has been seen as a moral issue.
Totally.
Get your act together, get your shit together. You don't have, the kind of integrity or constitution or whatever. It's not seen. And I guess we're changing now to the point where we're starting to understand that it's actually a medical issue. And there is an imbalance going on in people's lives, and that the things that we go through in life do actually contribute to our mental states and our capacity to function. And exactly like what you said, Trevor, your drugs were your medicine. They helped you for a long time, right? And starting to understand that more, and that there's limits to that. But how do we take care of ourselves? How do we grow? How do we learn beyond that? We've reached a place in employment law now as well, where you can't be fired for needing to go to treatment anymore. Your job has to be there for you when you come back to it. And so that opens up some new doors and new pathways. And I would imagine that the old guard isn't going to access that, because that's not the way that they came up in the world, right? But it's there.
No. We always talk like we're willing to accept those consequences. Right? Like, yeah, I'll be fine. If I die, I die. Like, we just embraced it. I mean, that's the first thing. I mean, we need more people to embrace, like, themselves, that this is a disease. This is not, like, I had a lot of shame. Like, why can't I stop? Why did I start? Why have I done this? But the reality is, the tail of the tape says I put the cocaine, the ketamine, and the benzodiazepines in front of my children, in front of my mother, in front of my job, in front of it was everything to me to have those things. And that, looking at myself and who I am, that's an illness. Like, it wasn't by choice. I would have told you on any day how important my children were. And it created a great deal of hurt. I think men out there need to know, like, there's men in my situation, there's men in Kale's situation. And when I know what it looks like, it feels like you're just fucking letting everybody down. It feels like you should be able to stop, and you think you're tough enough to stop, and you're judging yourself for it. But look, you just don't have a choice in this stuff right now. Not without reaching out and getting help. If you can shut it off, you're not the guy I'm speaking to right now. If you're okay with your behavior, you're not seeing any negative consequences, and you cannot use when you want to, carry on, sir. You're probably just fine. But there's a whole bunch of people right now that are being represented in those overdose statistics, and in treatment centers and pre-treatment, like guys that just haven't figured it out.
And I want to throw in there too that, I mean, you're talking a lot about addiction, Trevor, but folks that are not necessarily addicted, that can still choose, though, because of the stupid drug poisoning crisis that's going on. You're not even safe doing that's the gamble, right? Totally. You're not even safe if you can control it, if you can choose, right?
All it takes is one simple small line, one small smoke. It's like, doesn't matter. Just because it was the way it was before doesn't mean it's going to be that way next time. And
it's always a gamble.
And that's just it, is when you're in those shitty dark times and it's really hard for you and you push yourself to the limits, or you try something new, that's usually when you lose a guy. Usually, like we said, in building hope there, most men die alone by themselves. And they'll never get to understand now it's like how much they were loved and how many people would have given up anything to be there beside them to help them. Instead, they said, you know what, I'm used to doing this in silence. I can do this on my own. I know I'm going to do things the old fashioned way. It sucks right now. I know it can make me feel good right now. And they
Just gotta
close their
suck it
eyes
up,
and
right? Just suck it up.
suck it up. That's right.
No, it's accurate. Like, and I'm hearing that from when we're going to different sites and, you know, people are willing to just engage with us and maybe don't really know what the podcast is about or whatever. And they're just talking in general. And yeah, that's the mentality that I hear is suck it up, keep your head down, like don't get into trouble and, you know, deal with your shit. Like but there's no other options. There's no other skills. And it's like, well, how do you deal with your shit?
Yeah.
That's
Right?
counseling on a job site,
Yeah.
right? Like amongst the guys, you know, you're walking the hang with us, and when you start to fall apart a little traditionally, guys are like, you know what, you got to get your shit together. Fuck,
Yeah.
you know, we don't want to be guilty by association. We share the same secrets with the people we're working with. We don't want to be liable,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and we don't know how. You know what? Honestly, just genuinely, we don't know how to support each other
Yeah.
when we're
Absolutely.
really struggling. We're just not programmed for it.
Now I just need to ask Trevor here. What's the tip on the beard here, man? I've been trying
don't
and
cut
it's
it.
not happening.
Don't cut it.
Just don't ever cut it.
Don't cut it. No, but it sounds like some sarcastic thing a dude with a beard says. But no, honestly, don't cut it for the longest time. Just let it go. You want to brush it,
Yeah.
but there's like all your hair grows at different levels. So for some people it takes like 3 days and they've got what I've got. But for others, like at 3 months it gets thicker, at 6 months it gets thicker, and it'll just start coming in as all the different cycles of hair growth come. But they're worth
Awesome.
growing. You should definitely stick to it.
There you go. That's that little
don't
bit
cut
of
it.
father connection that I needed there. I
There
needed
you
that
go.
the beard talk.
Yeah. Hey, it took me until this is my first beard I've ever had, and I didn't start growing it until after I left treatment. So
Really?
yeah,
And it's such a trademark look for you now.
Absolutely.
it's weird. It's very polarizing too.
Interesting. My ex-husband is a plumber, and at one point, not too long after the Pirates of the Caribbean phenomenon, his hair was a little bit longer, so he had it tied back in a ponytail and had the whole Johnny Depp goatee thing going on. And
Working on it.
Oh, there you
there
go.
you go. Yeah, it's
Working on
growing.
it.
Woo!
I'm getting there.
He and his buddies, his crew called themselves the Plumbers of the Caribbean. And they would sing on site, and they would sing like stupid ass pirate songs and stuff like that. And it was just like, and it's like, you know, and he was
Very familiar.
He was enjoying work then, right? Whereas others,
Yeah.
he would just be fucking miserable when he came home.
That's how we got through our days, right? Like we're either ribbing each other or we're writing stupid songs or
Exactly.
practical jokes on each other.
Yeah.
Like I don't regret a single day I spent in the business. I love the people.
Mhm.
I love the work. I love the culture. It's a hard place to be when you're struggling.
Yeah. Off the Clock Toolbox Talk has been a Fraser House Society project, executive produced and co-hosted by Karen Jansen, managed by Delan Young on the traditional, ancestral, and unceded territory of the Coast Salish peoples. Production of this material has been made in part through a financial contribution from Health Canada. The views expressed herein do not necessarily reflect the views of Health Canada or Fraser House Society. Special thanks to project supporter Clear Marketing for all your swag needs. Clear Marketing helped us get Off the Clock Toolbox Talk carpentry pencils that we can bring to your site. Contact tradespodcast@gmail.com for pencils and clearmarketing.ca for your other marketing needs. Help save lives. Go to tradespodcast.com to find tools and tips to promote the podcast on your site with minimal stressors. Like us on socials, Instagram @offtheclock.toolboxtalk. Send us constructive feedback in any form you'd like. tradespodcast@gmail.com. Help us, help you.